Hey everyone, welcome to Working with Designers, a podcast where design meets business. I'm Kristin Silva, and alongside co-host Jake Cooper, we dive into the real stuff behind branding, client work, creative strategy, and running a design business. We keep it honest, a little nerdy, and always practical. So whether you're a designer or just working with one, there's something here for you. Let's get into this week's episode.
Oh, Coda.
Put Pepper in the, she's in doggy daycare today, so.
Oh, very nice.
She interrupted like 3 meetings yesterday, so I said, all right, it's time to put you in.
Enough's enough.
Yeah, so it's been 3 weeks. How long has it been since we recorded?
It's been a while since we last recorded. We've been checking in, but we haven't actually recorded in a little while. So how are things going? What do you want to talk about today? We gotta find what our topic is today. We're gonna explore a little bit.
I know. I don't know what's hot on your brain. Do you have anything?
I'm trying to think. Here are the things that have been going on. I did a couple networking events, which was super nice, and I love meeting kind of new people.
Same ones that you've been in, or new ones?
Both. I've been the one that I frequent the most has like 2 or 3 a month, all in my little area. So it's nice just kind of hopping around, like being a presence, just being seen.
Yeah. And
just hanging out with like the same kind of people every couple times a month, which is super nice. But another networking event kind of popped up, run by another designer and I believe she's in insurance and travel, just for like kind of local entrepreneurs to network and do a happy hour. It's called Networking at Night. They were super great. Lots of fun to just grab a beer and chat with people.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, and the ones that you are, do you want to disclose the ones that you're currently in?
Sure.
Yeah, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like there's that many. I do a networking event through the American Marketing Association. They have a bunch of like regional chapters and local chapters. So wherever you're listening to this from, look up AMA and there's probably something near you. I do some meetups through the American Advertising Federation. We have a local one called CRAF, the Capital Region American Advertising Federation. Probably getting that wrong, but nobody cares. Our friend Sean from Space Out is one of the, leadership people there. So it's nice. That's how I met them originally. And they throw on really cool events for other designers and creative marketing people. And then this Networking at Night series is super great, which is just super local, all kind of solopreneurs or just people that love to kind of network and talk about business stuff while getting a drink at the same time. So super and nice.
This is all Saratoga based?
Saratoga, Albany area, Capital Region. I still don't know what Capital Region really is apart from Albany and Saratoga.
Well, you were in the city for a while and then you ventured to Saratoga. Would you say Saratoga's pretty artsy as you ventured out, or how would you describe the city? I really don't have a lot of familiarity.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even really know. Like I moved here right before the pandemic, literally like a couple months before. So I still feel like I'm like getting used to the city and learning what it is. There's little pockets of, artist residencies and creative outlets here and there between Saratoga and like the next couple towns over. Albany is a big city, so they have a lot of things going on, but it's kind of becoming a tech hub a little bit. There's a few like startups in town. There's some buzz going that way. There's actually another great networking series called Tech Valley, where it's kind of, they just get startups and entrepreneurs together to kind of do pitches, and anyone can kind of attend and just kind of network and meet people in the industry. So yeah, it's an interesting town. Like I wouldn't move to Saratoga specifically to start a design career, but it is a nice, like, it reminds me a lot of Providence in that there's some walkability, there's a lot of drivability. But it's like a small, kind of easy living kind of place where your dollar goes a lot further than it does in the city. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to, I guess, quickly share a bit, Venture Cafe is a long-standing kind of organization. They have a couple chapters. They're not huge, but I've been going to their consistent networking or meetups or whatever you want to call them. I actually found that, so they have since closed as of like last year. So we don't really have a big thing in Providence anymore. And I was actually talking to a couple design folks locally to maybe spearhead, a Providence something, because it seems like there's a need. But anyway, Venture Cafe was a very cool spot, not necessarily to like directly network with other people, like a classic networking event, but it was more, they had a lot of great speakers come in. Their presentations were really wonderful. And I learned a lot, like even, us talking, I think, when I reached out to you about the whole podcast, I mean, this all was inspired by being at Venture Cafe, hearing a panel of podcasters talk about their dynamic. And I was in the audience pestering them with these weird questions. Where I was like, how do you start? And they're like, you just do. And I was like, okay. But anyway, yeah. So I go for my networking. Unfortunately, I have a little bit of a trek. I go to Boston for networking.
Nice.
And so since I'm kind of niched in some form of consumer goods, there's some very specific ones out there. So Branch Food is a organization that has like luncheon sort of networking events that I go to. Nutter is a law firm that has a CPG vertical that has all kinds of talks and resources that are really interesting. Both those are in Boston. And then I think I told you last time that I've been part of a dinner series that's actually on Aquidneck Island, which isn't Providence. It's on the like island side of Rhode Island. But that's been interesting too. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, I haven't been doing any of that since we last talked, but yeah, anyway.
Well, I mean, those all sound like pretty big events, so well, I'm sure they're not put on as frequently.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I looked up the ones that you have been kind of more part of, because I think there's a interesting, correct me if I'm wrong, the ADA is, or AMA. It's more marketing and agency. It's a bigger, like a bigger net of creative.
Yeah, it's not specifically design. It's kind of anyone that touches marketing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that like don't do marketing at all, that are just there to learn and like meet other people in the space. Yeah.
So what are the insights that you've gotten from your last couple of weeks going to the events?
Yeah, no, it was funny. I was talking to somebody the other day at one of these events where it was his first time networking at an event rather than just kind of talking to people offline or whatever. And it's amazing the people you meet. Like I wouldn't, if I were recommending networking to somebody, I wouldn't say it's the place to do direct sales or to, find your next job necessarily, but you just build these connections with people and you get your name out there. You start seeing people at other events, and you just build little relationships, and it's just great to feel some sort of community, whether that's collaborative and you work together, or just your colleagues that are all trying to get the same thing done, trying to make a living, trying to make some kind of impact in the world. That these are fun people to be around, and defining spaces that are specific to someone's entrepreneurial spirit, it's hard to come by. There's a lot of people that are, let's start a sales club, or let's let's push each other through this like grind set mentality. And I feel like that gets publicized a lot more than just people that are trying to, leverage a network, come together, maybe work together, but just hold each other up. And that's the stuff that I find really valuable. And the truth is, you never know where a lead's going to come from. As much as I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago, as much as people tout like you need to have this big advertising presence or big marketing presence and do all these, tactics, most business comes from lead gen, from referral. And just making your connections any way you can, I find to be way more quality. I find it to be higher quality and more reliable, even though it's unpredictable, than just like spraying and praying some marketing.
I agree. Yeah, it's almost like it's very tough sometimes to, do the outbound outreach.
Yeah.
Where, you could pay a good amount of money and, do the whole, I don't know, advertising thing, and that will get leads, but like won't always identify the right personality match or the right person. And then there's like the other aspect to it where it's like you're kind of trying to master being, in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Because it's like all timing related. And
Yeah.
the beauty of referrals is that they're probably your people if they're referring you and they need your services and you don't even know it. It's just coming to you. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's tough. Like, yeah, I see like a lot of, I know you see it too when people are marketing, like, are you relying too much on referrals? And you're just like, yeah, it's the easiest win.
Right.
Like, it's tough. It's tough to kind of not want to just celebrate that more somehow.
Yeah. And the more that I, investigate and talk to people about what does marketing mean for you as a business owner, it's so different based on the business. Like if you're a restaurant, marketing is huge and really important, and getting the name out there is great. But if you're in B2B, or if you're a service provider, it's less important than making substantial connections. And the information that's, put out there by the marketing gurus and the experts may not apply to you just in your situation. So it's important, I think, to, always keep an eye open and, figure out what your strategy is and what works for you, rather than going all in on one thing.
I think sometimes, the first time I ever heard the term, it's a numbers game, the more you put out there, the more you get back. I think that can be a really misleading term because, if you take it at face value, I think people will just kind of blindly go out and, put their effort in all these different areas. Whereas, like, I think that there's obviously truth to the term. I think you have to be very strategic in who you're pointing to and where your effort's going, because, and that gets difficult when you start thinking of numbers, because the numbers are going to dwindle the more strategic you get. But
yeah,
It has to be that way. Otherwise, you're kind of just throwing spaghetti at the wall. You're like standing on top of a picnic table screaming at an open field. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right.
You know what I mean? Like, just like,
Yeah, when they say like follow the numbers or get your numbers up, some people think that means like making a bunch of content and putting it out there or getting a lot of traffic to your website. When it could just mean like talking to somebody at a networking event or just getting exposed to new people and harnessing those kind of numbers rather than, purely defined data points that are tracked by Google Analytics. There's
yeah,
all different ways of kind of approaching how you be more productive in your business. And it's not
yeah,
always a leading figure or a trailing figure.
yeah. I try to think of like my younger self too, and like when I started networking for the first time, and like there's so many events that I went to that like don't apply to me, like are non-applicable in any form. And I'd be like, well, if I keep going to these, something's gonna happen. And it's like, well, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's so much like blanket advice of you should be at this place or you should be at that place. And like you might be too young in the business or whatever to realize that's not really your scene. That's not really the market for people that are looking for what you're doing. Maybe they're collaborators or maybe
Yeah.
they're, a community that you can be a part of, but they might not actually be your target audience.
Yeah. I had a great, I don't know if this is a good theme or not, but might be leaning into this. I don't know. I There was a great icebreaker question I was prompted at one of the last networking events I went to. And it was, go around, tell your name, what you do, and tell us the worst piece of advice you've been given. And like a lot of people would go around and say whatever it was. And they would actually lean into how monumental that shift of mindset was and why it was such a big mistake that they took in that advice.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm curious to do you have, and this is coming out of nowhere.
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
putting you on the spot. When I was the second person to go, I was so red in the face because I was like, oh my God, I need more time for this.
Yeah.
This is a hard question.
I feel like I've blocked out all the bad advice. So it's hard to recall like
Yeah.
what set me down the wrong path. Um,
Yeah.
no, I think it's just the recommendation of like you need to be on this platform or you need to
Mm.
be hitting every channel everywhere. That kind of mentality of you need to be showing up in all these places when you don't have to.
Did you have you in the
Yeah.
past tried doing all platforms or something and that kind of got burnt out?
Yeah, I mean, years ago, when I was still maybe full time and looking to, broaden my reach, my network, I was on Dribble, I was on Behance, I was on Pinterest, I was on Instagram, Facebook, just everywhere trying to push shit. And that's not a strategy, just being everywhere. And that's not like there's not more depth to it than that. It's just you trying to be everywhere with the same information or putting yourself out there. Yes, gets you more exposure, but it's not really moving towards anything. And I think the more that you're careful with your time and considering what you're actually contributing and maybe going those next 2-3 steps down the line of, well, how is this actually affecting my business or drawing in business? It's exponential. It's like night and day than just putting everything everywhere. Because I've gotten no leads from Behance. I've gotten no leads from Pinterest. No leads from Dribble. But I mean, it works for some people, and that's great. Maybe that's because that's their platform of choice and they invest a lot of time in it. But I think this mentality of spread yourself thin, just being everywhere, is not productive. So I guess that's my worst advice that I've heard.
Well, I like that you went into, excuse me, I like how you went into sort of you practicing that juggle, that very complex juggle.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just unsustainable. It's just hard. Yeah. What
Yeah.
did you say at that event where you were like asked the question?
I didn't have enough time. I was like, so I'll tell you one, and then I'll tell you one that I'm think is bad advice I'm learning, but like currently I have two. So the one I said like impulsively because I was like didn't have time at all was I just can't stand that term, the like the customer's always right, the client is always right.
Yeah.
And I say that not to like criticize or like not take ownership of maybe my own mistakes and practices or so forth. I don't mean it that way, but I mean it in a way that, and we talked about this actually on the last one that we produced in terms of episodes. The I lost my train of thought here. Um, when to walk away and when it becomes a financial kind of burden. And when you kind
Yeah.
of really lean into the client is always right, especially in design, it's so damaging.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that I think is kind of probably an obvious, like it's kind of riddled out, like of our society. It's kind of an old school term at this point, but that's what I said at the beginning. And then I like went home and I was thinking about it on my way home from that event. And then, something I've been just kind of currently battling. I don't know if it's the worst advice, but I'm going against it finally. And it's kind of a friend actually told me this. I won't name the friend, but even though they're great and they've given me many good advice. But a design friend told me they were like, we had a conversation years ago, and they were like so irritated by the idea of a portfolio out there that wasn't real work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And
Like they didn't do that, or they were just a team member on that, or this
not,
wasn't a real project. This was
so actually like think more like when you see design agencies out there and they build out their case studies like on steroids. So like the system, maybe they only had to do stationery and a website, but on their case study, they've got campaign and they've got all this stuff, but none of that or half of that might be in production.
Yeah.
Right. And the friend criticized that where it was just like, well, that's not in the real world. So why are you showing it?
Yeah.
And the reason why I think it's really bad advice is it's your case study should be showing your expertise.
Yeah.
And your systems and how systems can expand. And sometimes systems aren't as clear without showing the whole toolbox, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm in a process right now of just kind of updating the case studies on Studio Quiche's site. And there was a lot of stuff that was in the mix in our process that that was half baked. And I'm in this predicament where I'm like, do I full throttle it? It's more aesthetic stuff. Like the strategy was already done, obviously. But I'm now kind of going back and being like, I don't know. Question for you. Do you think that that's bad advice is to criticize design, to not show something that is fully in production for that case study? Does that make sense?
Yes. And I have a few thoughts because it's great we're talking about this because I'm reconsidering my own portfolio at the same time and my website. I think it is totally valid to show work in progress and whatever things have come from that. It's interesting to talk about portfolio and case study because I think they're two different mentalities. and they don't necessarily have to be. I think when designers talk about portfolio, it's literally just images of their work. Here's my project. Here's the stuff that's going on. Like, here are the sketches. Here's the individual parts so that you can see all the things. Here's the mock-ups. And then when people talk about case studies, it's like an elevated portfolio example where there's more description about the process and the strategy and the results. And I think both are valid. I think both are really important. But I think portfolio curation and not, limiting yourself to only work that's been, printed or out in the real world, launched, versus something that's in production or something that's, you know, maybe only existed as an exercise rather than a real world project. I think those things are equally important. I think they have different, factors to them, but the reason we put this stuff out there is to demonstrate expertise. We're just trying to say we can do this, or this is how we think. And I think however you actually go about doing that is more important than the format. And so what I've been thinking for myself, and I'm curious if this is kind of your mentality that you're thinking about for your website, I've been thinking of scaling mine back. Like I've been researching other people's websites, and I'm kind of thinking I could go down to a one pager. Like just have a couple projects, focus really tightly on results and, what I actually worked on, rather than siloing them into individual projects and not have them just exist as, thumbnails with no description. But I think the need for like a massive portfolio or to go super in depth might actually be counterintuitive for what your website is meant to do, which is to facilitate a call in most places. For most designers that have websites, you're trying to get somebody into a call to talk about your services or to learn more about what you actually do, rather than the ins and outs of a specific project.
Love the piece that you said about a portfolio is supposed to kind of exemplify our thinking and our expertise rather than, always being something that's living out in the world, we'll say. So I do like how you framed that. I think that's really excellent. What was the second part? You wanted to know if I am leaning in the same direction of where you're kind of thinking for portfolio?
Yeah. Are you leaning into more depth in explaining your process and projects, or keeping it simple?
Oh, the battle. I know.
Or just what's your thinking? Like what kind of things are you
Yeah.
noticing and responding to in terms of updating a website or a portfolio?
Yes. Well, so so to respond to the first part, I would say a bit of both. I think in depth in certain ways that I should have more depth, and in some areas scale back. So I think it's a combination. In regards to the approach that I'm looking for Studio Quiche, I think that the best way to describe it is I'm trying to exemplify what Studio Quiche has and its assets in itself, whether that's with me strongly leading or sometimes not, in the projects. And that's quite a big portfolio.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think my biggest battle, I think I might be expanding more and showcasing more portfolio. Historically, I mean, I think that there's been fallacy in my evolution of portfolios. I'm sure there's, I haven't been the best at really honing in bounce rate and all the metrics and all that stuff, right? But all in all, yeah, the portfolio pages aren't getting nearly the same traction, so there's that. So I can understand why you would want to simplify. I think I'm leaning towards maybe building out a bit more of a robust portfolio section.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm actually thinking about separating results from portfolio.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know how to do that yet. But
Yeah.
I think that's where.
I've seen some people that just have like portfolio or projects or work, and then separately they have another page just case studies, where it's basically the same thing, but one just has way more depth than the other. I think that could work. I think there's no reason not to. I'm leaning more. It's funny, we're talking about projects and portfolios and stuff. I'm almost leaning, at least for myself, I'm thinking more about leaning into like blogs or our podcast, like promoting the thinking that's on display there more so in the individual work. Like, I definitely want to tout results where I can get them, but design results are like vague. They're not as clearly defined. You have some great ones which are amazing and should be put out there, but I think a lot of people struggle to actually articulate what the results of their design work is, or include how to capture them in their process. But like testimonials, those are great, or just before and afters are super great. But I feel this struggle where every time I want to update my website, it's like, oh, I should be putting more work up, or I have to, articulate this or render the mock-ups, and where do I get the mock-ups from? And how do I, synchronize all these different things? That it's creating a lot of friction for me just, investing in my business and on the website side, that I almost wonder if it's needed, where I can just focus on, maybe I have 4 core case studies and that's it. And if you want to see more work or live work, go to Instagram, go to these other places where I can post that stuff. It doesn't have to be, front and center on the website. And if you want to learn more about, how I do stuff, I got a podcast. I got I got a LinkedIn. I got a blog. I got all these things. I feel like that is more revealing than just the individual case study or the work itself. So it's kind of a new shift.
Yeah. And I feel as if portfolios are kind of like jail for all of us designers, because it's like the second you post it, it becomes dated so quickly that you have to like constantly
100%
engineer to it.
I've still got work that's super old, but I, rather than retool it or figure out what to do, it still serves its purpose, but you still feel that like, oh, I'm not doing enough, or I don't have something that's as up to date as it should be.
It's interesting when you look back at like Pentagram, they have old stuff on there.
Yeah.
You could go back and it's old, and they just have a system, and they make sure that, and they also have like 26 partners. So
right. They've got
someone
hundreds
out of the
employees.
26 needs to 26 groups of people, really. Just those are the leaders. Yeah.
It's funny, I was talking to someone at this networking event, and we were just marveling at how all of these tech companies and app companies are focusing so much on the large corporations that there's a huge, gap for products or services that are designed specifically for smaller businesses, small size businesses.
Like that.
Like we were talking about CRMs and Salesforce and even like Notion to some degree. Like some of these competitors they're so dialed into like, here's how you do an enterprise application that can synchronize teams for 100 people or multiple departments, whatever. But then when you drill down to like, I'm a one person business that does good shit. How can I make this work for me? It's either you're on the free plan or you're on the gigantic plan with all these bells and whistles, and it's overwhelming and you're never going to take advantage of all of it. That it's like there's this middle ground where there's a need for simplicity, but also the feature set that the big companies are getting handed to them. Like, do you use a CRM software at all?
No.
Yeah.
But I'm getting to the point where my brain can't hold, even on lists and stuff, I can't hold it. I'm like, it's tough.
Yeah.
I'm at the cusp of a CRM, actually. I use project management software and it's been working fine, but yeah, I'm definitely cusp CRM.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay for it though.
I know. And that's the thing is it's so expensive to just get, you're like, I'm one person. I don't have thousands of people I need to email or track or whatever, but
I think a good indication is when you're sitting there and you're writing down notes to yourself or typing them out, putting them in your software, and you're like, I talked to another person and I don't know where is this person? Like, I gotta look back. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like, where is this lead, or where is this like, you know, SOW, or where are we here? Yeah.
Or like, how do I file it? Is this a warm lead, a cold lead? Do I need to follow up with this? I feel like I should track it, but maybe it's not important. All those kind of things. Yeah.
Now, are you actively building an email list right now?
I'm trying to, but not really.
Going back into
it's a new focus. I do. Yeah. So, okay. So here's something related. Not to sidestep the question. I'm building to it. Okay.
I'm already derailing
give me a second,
us by
Kristin.
doing
Let
this.
me think about this.
I'm already derailing us. I'm like, so let's talk about that.
So I pitched a new webinar to the AMA and they accepted, and I've got a new webinar coming out in May. So sign up now. Link in the description below. No, not really. But it's about like,
it can be. We can put it in the
description. It could be, you know,
that's fine.
Soft tease. Yeah.
Soft tease. Jake is trying to sell to you guys. It's fine. No, I'm
you know,
kidding.
I just have fans that want to interact. No, I'm kidding. And one of the aspects of that talk is the idea of rented audiences and owned audiences. And have you heard of that term before?
Well, I understand it. It's like Instagram versus an email list.
Exactly. Like so many people put so much effort into social media and gaming that system that can change on a whim. Like YouTube changes its algorithm, Twitter gets bought by a fascist. You know, there's so many different things that could happen that you're not really in control of what's going on. And all of a sudden you lose whatever following you're there, or it becomes 10 times more difficult to reach them. Similar to this, I listened to a podcast with the founder, creator of Patreon, talking about the struggles of creating long-term relationships, long-term followings on TikTok, because the algorithm promotes content that people don't just scroll away from in 5 seconds. So if you have a follower list on TikTok that you want to message and, you know, promote my band's touring in this town, let us know. If they don't immediately engage with it, they don't see that content as frequently, and they've already signed up to be notified by them. You know, the algorithm is pushing fans away from creators that already have established followings. So the alternative to this, that those types of channels will be rented audiences, where you're really just, you don't actually own anybody there. You're just, you know, borrowing the platform. The alternative is email lists, where people are actually, subscribing to you. They're willing to give you an email to be sent messages directly. I think Seth Godin calls this permission marketing. I don't know if he invented the term, but he's my go-to marketing expert. And it's so much better in terms of being able to, communicate directly with fans or followers, subscribers, whatever you want to call it. And it just creates a far better community than trying to, appease the algorithm on the social media networks. That's not to say you shouldn't have both, because one garners attention, one garners loyalty. So you kind of need both aspects of the funnel. But sorry, go ahead.
It's also tough because we have these tools that are, for us, yes, we have a strategy forward kind of offering. We both have strategy forward services. However, people often hire us for our visuals, right? So it's kind of a package. And then we have these, what you're saying, rented vehicles of marketing that are very visually, that people are searching, they're using it as like a Google search, right? To find creatives. And yeah, we don't have the ability to control the algorithm.
Yeah.
So it's tough, it's more of a gamble than it is a strategic. I mean,
yeah,
it can be strategic, but they're constantly changing. And who do you actually listen to point you in the right direction when the algorithm does change?
Mm-hmm.
How, relevant is it in any given moment? Anyway, so
the thing that I liked most about that talk was his theory is that these social media platforms don't favor long-term relationships with creators. They favor the viral TikTok. Like, you could blow up from one TikTok, but it won't necessarily mean you'll get followers that watch your next one. Like, it almost incentivizes making one good piece of content versus telling a long-form story. So your one individual piece of content could be far more popular than you as an entire person could be. So it's very difficult to navigate that kind of transition from, oh, you like me from this, here's what else I got. And it's hard to kind of strategize that play. Versus, YouTube and long form content creates far better engagement, loyalty, follow-up. You could have a very small following, but have huge impact just in terms of all those factors. So basically, we're doing it right, you guys. We're pushing this podcast in the right direction.
Not a numbers game.
Don't at me. No.
No,
but
that's
yeah,
fair.
It's making me think about, maybe I should invest more into my own newsletter that I have not updated since creating. But I think I'm gonna start doing monthly newsletter drops just to build it up, keep some communication going.
I love that. I have a book, I don't have it in front of me, that helped me with email strategy that I'm going to send you. I don't know why it's I haven't read it in years. This is why I need to do build a better brain here. But anyway, which I'm halfway through, by the way, just not implemented.
Which one?
What is it? Build a better brain?
Building a second brain?
Build a second brain. I can't even get the title right. Yeah, I have been reading it. I've been going. So I have not been able to read in my house lately. I think because I've been working remote a lot lately. I haven't been going into the office, which should change this next month because I feel like it's warm weather. I don't know why I'm being so stale in this environment, but I have been going to coffee shops specifically to get in my reading done. And so I've been actually reading that book that you recommended. So
I find all those productivity books are just candy. Like they're so easy to run through because it's all like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I could do that. I could do.
Yeah. It's empowering. So it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I love, as much as I don't know if I use that, the second brain system Tiago Forte talks about in how to build a second brain or building a second brain. I do use his para system a lot, like the project, archives, resources, assets, I think is the last one. I use that for all my like files and stuff now.
oh, I didn't even know that I have that as my system, but I didn't know that that's what it came from.
Yeah, just the idea of organizing it in that way, I think was
Yeah.
a shift. Um, but yeah, I that book definitely like opened my eyes to different ways of interacting with digital media and output and productivity. So I love that book. It's a cool book.
Yeah. So what's the theme that we're doing right now? I'm
I
trying to
don't
figure it out.
know. I don't know.
That's it. We've gone over some bad pieces of advice and where we're
Yeah.
navigating where we think is best for marketing. So insights in the branding and creative field, where we think, and I guess that could be applied, beyond branding, but just, arguing what is a portfolio in 2025 and how much do you
Yeah.
use it as a crutch? And is it more about getting your voice out there and your mind out there in some kind of vehicle over your portfolio? But I do want to actually, now that I think about it, can I ask another question, or do you have something in your mind that you want to kind of move us into?
I've got something, but you ask first.
Okay.
Maybe it'll.
My my thought about where we might want to go right now is actually talking about the beauty of design and how we're strategists, right? And talking about the beauty of the visual experience
Mhm.
and its value and its inherent value next to the strategic and how we weigh that out. That was where I was thinking. Where are you thinking about?
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of where I was headed because I was thinking about we were talking about bad advice, and to me, a lot of it is bad advice tends to come from setting expectations that are unreal. Like you don't have to follow these rules. A portfolio doesn't have to be this thing. It doesn't have to be that. So in terms of like weighing visual stimulation versus strategy insight, I think it's totally important to understand who your audience is and what they're looking for. So as you build a portfolio, like what are you actually using your portfolio to do? Is it to tell somebody how you think, or is it just to show them, here's my craft that I can execute?
Or a balance of both. Depends
Yeah,
on how you sell.
yeah, yeah. Where did you want to go with that?
I mean, I feel like we often are talking about the strategy side. The last time that we had some like disconnects with, and this might be because I'm going to take a couple steps back. You and I went to school for more of a visual execution of what is known as graphic design, right? And
Yeah,
then through the evolution of the last 12 plus years, I don't know where we're at, 13, 14 years, I don't
I
even know.
think 13. Yeah.
And we're getting up there.
Don't say that.
And over time, I think it's a natural progression. You start in visual design, and as like projects grow, the more the why matters and aligning that on more of a strategic baseline, right? But now, you and I have recently spoken openly about this on this podcast, that we've both hit some hurdles with past clients where they've hired us and we said we can do something a little more strategic, but not necessarily visual, forgetting that, or maybe it's not forgetting, I'm giving them a lot of credence here, but well, I'll say it anyway, forgetting that they may have reacted to our portfolio and that's why they hired us to begin
Hmm.
with.
Yeah.
So while they might be like nodding their heads saying, yeah, that sounds good. We'll start with strategy. They were reacting to the visual outputs that we have created, and that's what they're expecting.
Yeah. That makes me think of the Four Conversations.
Have you read it? I have not started it.
Oh, you haven't started? Okay.
No, but I have it in my, You started it.
Yeah, well, I read some of it. I'm maybe like a quarter through it, so I still got more to go. But Blair End talks about that idea of there's a flip that happens in the customer's eyes where you go from being the person they sought out for execution to becoming the expert. And the groundwork that gets laid to do that flip is by expressing your expertise ahead of the call, like putting your ideas out there, case studies, whatever, and then you being able to kind of transition that conversation into one of strategy rather than execution. There's more details to it that I have not read the entire way, but for people that want to beat us to the punch, read The Four Conversations by Blair Enns.
We can, the next post that I'm having to dive into it. I have it. I've been reading all the other fun reads, but we can have a recap call on that.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. Book club.
Book club.
But yeah, I think I lost my train of thought too.
I love that you just said book club.
Book
Podcast book club. That could be a fun community tool for us. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know where I was going with that other than is something that we've both kind of recently oddly been both finding that that's a hurdle. I think we've both communicated that we believe that it could have gone better from our own communication and refining the statement of works.
Yeah.
However, I guess my thought moving forward is that do you find yourself ever abandoning the creative or not signing on to something without both strategy and creative?
I am 100% moving in that direction.
Which one? One or two?
Both. I think let me set some context here. I also want to push back on the idea that RISD was only about execution, because I found RISD to be way more concerned with the why are you designing this? What does it mean? More so than the refinement of this has to be this way, or here's how you polish. I actually wish we had a little bit more education in that. And it could have just been my teachers or my curriculum that was less focused on that. And I'm not saying you're saying that necessarily, but I found RISD to be really great at asking, why are you making these decisions? What brought you to that place? And I think that strategic element has carried through my entire career.
If I can just add in real quick on that. I don't want to say, I didn't mean it in the sense that...
J'accuse. You are accused. No, I'm kidding.
No, I want to say, I totally agree with you. I'm thinking the level in which I mean strategy, it was the output that we were to develop was very visually leaning and not positioning a company.
Yes.
Do you understand? But that's
I see. Okay. Yeah, it was a very strategic focus, but not on the broader context of where's this going to be published, what's it going to be done. It's more strategic in terms of creative decision making. Is that
we didn't go over a lot of, at least for me.
Yeah.
We didn't go over brand architecture and that level of strategy. Anyway, so.
Yes.
But I don't want to interrupt. Keep going.
No, well, I think this idea of, somebody gets out of school, they're focused on, I have this skill, I can execute, let me find people that value that skill for execution. I think part of a natural career path is slowly leaning away from execution and more into strategy, which I think we're both at, and which is kind of ironic because we both are strategists to begin with at the same time. So it's like we're leaning more into, really putting the value on that strategy rather than saying the value's in the output and the product of design. And I think that's where I'm headed. I would bet that's kind of where you're headed too. It's great that you're bringing this up because I've been thinking a lot about, like, I think I want to do less design. And I think I'm kind of moving away from valuing my work in terms of here's the PDFs that I've created or the presentations or the images that I've generated, and more, this is the thinking that created the impact. And it's a weird state to be in after a career of someone making images to suddenly be like, am I not a designer if I abandon that aspect?
Okay. So you are thinking about, so sorry, I didn't know if I got a clear stance on where you were. So you are thinking leaning hard into strategy and removing the visual, we'll say visual out. But I don't know what to call this.
Yeah. Not fully.
It's not creative, but it's because creative output can be strategy.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
It's more like the creative execution. Like, I don't have to be the one that makes the Facebook ads or makes the website itself, maybe.
Correct. Okay.
But being someone that can provide, rather than being viewed as someone that makes websites, being viewed as someone that makes websites work.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to argue another part, though. Do you think that, and the reason why I ask this question is because I think it goes back to the portfolio argument. How much of a portfolio do you need a visual portfolio, period? Right. Could you break off and just be strategy and very Seth Godin, very like a lot of these people that we've been, at least you've sent my way and I've newly revisited. A lot of the strategists, they're strategy only. Yeah. Period. There is no, they're disconnecting from some of these kind of visual creative outputs.
Yeah, I think that's the natural progression. I mean, I'm not abandoning the execution side of my business. I've still, hit me up if you need a website, but there's going to be strategy as a main component of it.
Well, I wondered if execution was going to end with strategy. Like execution was you developing a plan, a highly detailed outline or plan, or conducting a workshop or whatever. Yeah. And then maybe the end offering is helping connect these people with executionists. I don't know what I call it. Yeah.
So I think we talked about it in the last video we recorded. We were talking about The Business of Expertise by David Baker. Mm-hmm. And he talked about how well-positioned companies have one exit, one entrance, or one entrance, two exits. And basically the idea is like you always go through the strategy door, whether that ends at strategy and you help them find a execution person to finish the job, or you do the execution yourself. All viable, great. But if you're a knowledge worker or if you're an expertise worker, it behooves you to start with strategy and build strategy as a major component of your work. And I think I'm leaning towards that model. Like I'm going to try not to take projects that are purely, web only. Like, I don't think I necessarily have, but I think I need to start you know, putting strategy as a line item on the bill per se. Need to make it really apparent that that's the value of working with me.
And the evolution might be that you start offering strategy as a standalone thing.
Yes.
And then the next step to that might be starting to be a shepherd for other creatives or something. Maybe it's not yourself executing. And then the third being you no longer are ever the shepherd to your own work.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I could see my career go in that direction, where really the only design work I do is for myself, like building out a course or designing, my brand experience and helping other people discover theirs, and then facilitating how they actually get that brand created.
I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. I don't think that necessarily has to be how everyone does this. I think, some people want to build big agencies or still want to be entrenched in the work. I still love, building things in Figma and creating designs, but I'm at a point where if I don't have a strategic element to it, I have a hard time continuing to just design for design's sake.
It almost feels unethical.
Yeah,
it's weird. It feels like you're just throwing clients' money out the door.
Yeah.
Or down the drain, out the door. Bring that back.
Well, I think what I'm realizing for both you and I is that I think we are more passionate about solving problems than we are about creating images. Creating images is just the medium through which we solve problems in a very, narrow, not fully fleshed out way, because we do so much more than just that, obviously. But I think that's the perception.
I think the difficulty in my position, and this has been definitely on my mind while I evolve the site and work on the site, is that my selling is very tethered to my portfolio.
Yeah.
Or our portfolio, whatever, It's not just me in the portfolio, but
to Studio Quiche.
Studio Quiche's portfolio. And to remove that aspect, I need to definitely first, bring up more of the strategy up front.
Yeah.
And so it's tough. I don't think it's an overnight thing. I mean, I guess we'll see, but 9 times out of 10, and I've gone to pitch and win just strategy, and they're like, yeah, this is all we need, and I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
And they execute with someone else, and that's fine, but that's rarely the case. And so I'm like, well, how much am I putting this portfolio on a pedestal? Because clearly I'm putting it high. And I don't know, I don't think I'm at a place where I could say, if I started selling tomorrow just strategy, I don't know how it would work out. I think it's not as the portfolio is pretty, you either are moved by it or you're not, so
right.
It's a good vetting tool, and it has pulled in the right kind of clients that I like working with. So yeah, it's tough. I don't know where I'm going with this. I just wanted to comment that it's a weird line. It's a weird place to be, but it's exciting.
Yeah. And I think the challenge with designers, creative professionals, people in that space where craftsmanship is a big element, it's hard to find scalability in a very, craft-driven expertise. I think the only way, and not that scalability has to be the goal, but if you're doing something over and over again, you want to find a way to make your life easier, to make, maybe a jump start on how you do it. And when I started examining, how do I go about solving this problem or making a website or doing this thing, it was less like, oh, I have a personal aesthetic and I have taste and I have these things pushing me in a very specific direction, and more, I have processes that I do over and over. And maybe there's more value in articulating what that process is and sharing that with people than just the result of that process. That's where I think people that are craftsmen or in some sort of, manual work of some kind can find a sense of scalability. Is maybe it's in the teaching, maybe it's in the process itself and sharing a methodology, or articulating it and having someone come in and perform that methodology. There's a bunch of different ways.
I have a question for you though.
Yeah.
Like when you think of like standout moments in your career, right, where you haven't quite figured out the missing puzzle piece, right, in a project, or guys are kind of running to the race line of, I don't know, I'm not using the analogies right today, but you're just like chasing a deadline, and it's up to you. It's up to Jake to get it to the finish line. Is your wavering moment, your aha moment, still connected to visual? Because mine is.
I think
the execution is part of it.
Well, I think in that moment, it's because the strategy has led you down one path.
Sure.
And then it just becomes tactical of like, how do I implement my visual reasoning skills almost to make all this information make sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when I get really stuck on creative work, I think it's the RISD mentality to just like do 100 versions of whatever your idea is, and one of them will be the right one. Like that project of, what was it, the 100 ways to
500 squares.
The 500 squares. And I don't think that's necessarily the best way through that problem. I think
is that what you would say is your default?
I think so. I think when I get really stuck and I'm like, I have all the information, I just need to make this work. It's like, well, how many different ways can I rearrange the pieces to get a different result? And eventually, I call it like brute forcing. Like you're brute forcing an aesthetic to kind of work, because you stress test all the different ways of how the arrangement can make a better composition. And you can get there. You can find a better solution, and you like learn, oh, there's a challenge with this specific set of text or with this image, and maybe there's some flexibility where you can solve that problem. But more often than not, it's about bubbling up the strategy and thinking about, is this the right way to approach the problem given what's there?
So in those moments, mine's more like, I stew in the strategy. I ruminate. I get like an angry artist before hitting the canvas, and I just ruminate the shit out of the strategy. And I'm just like, what am I not seeing? What am I not seeing? What I'm not seeing? Like how, and then I'll do research visually, and I'll sit there and then once I get to like, say that the paint hits the canvas, I'm not doing like 500 visual versions. I'm doing one, but it's very, I know that what's going to work and what's not at that point for some reason. Maybe that wasn't always the case, but that's how I don't know if I ever was like a 500 like version though kind of person. I think I'm just a really angry analytical person before I create.
Well, there's definitely times where I'm like, well, this isn't going to work. Like, you need to fix the copy, or we need to pick a different image.
Yeah.
Where then it's like, you get that pushback from the client or whoever. They're like, we need to use it. I'm like, no, you don't. It's going to make it worse.
Yeah. I guess like moral of my thoughts are like, just kind of all of these things that are kind of coming together is that I think I fear going, me personally, I don't know if my strongest hand is just in strategy. I think I'm personally tethered a little. I'm toggling both. I don't know if I could fully give up execution.
Yeah.
Which I think it stunts your growth when definitely if you're trying
Not
to scale.
Not necessarily. Yeah.
I think it does, but
I mean, I think I wouldn't be as good of a strategist as I am. Not to say that I'm great or anything, but I think my value or my strategy is most informed by understanding how it takes place in execution. You know, like
good point.
At least in my personal experience, I feel like people really respond to the websites that I make or to the thinking that I have about websites because I've made them and I know how to build them, that I can see kind of the problems before they happen and kind of build around them. And I think there's a lot of value as a designer to have that same mentality of like, well, I know that we're going to need this kind of creative brief with these things articulated, with this challenge in mind, rather than, you know, the blank canvas in front of you just saying go. I think that level of experience helps you define what are the negotiables and non-negotiables, and it gets you closer.
Yeah. I think also too, I think that there's huge value in the execution going like pristine.
Yeah.
Like you have to be able to pass that. There's a finesse in being able to pass the baton from strategy into execution.
Mm-hmm.
And without handling that with care, things often fail, I think. And I say that because I've hired creatives to work alongside me, and I think all like more good than not, you know, experiences with that. I'm not saying that as a criticism, but I think like it's a huge value when you have someone that can just really we call it hot potato rounds, where I'll like do something and then pass it, and then they'll do something and then they'll pass it back, and it's just that crossfire is really important.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And I think they are two different skill sets, like being a very strategic person and understanding the broader context, and then having someone that can really polish that design and make something really compelling and engaging and well thought out. I think the challenge is the integration of the two, because, you know, we've seen beautiful designs that are utterly shallow and like are just eye candy, or just miss the mark, or are beautiful and great but not for that client or not for that purpose. And I think the game is, how can you make both sides of that coin, you know, work together?
Yeah, I mean, I see it often, you know, the failures in CPG work. Because maybe I'm just going to do a fake example, but, you know, a chip bag is branded like baby food or yogurt or something, you know what I mean? And someone's trying to be cool and weird, and it's like, but if someone's craving potato chips and you're the newest potato chip, but you look like you're candy or whatever else, you know what I mean? It's like that's a great example of like, you could have won a ton of awards for that creative. Maybe it's excellent illustration work on that, but like, you're not kissing the line between well trusted and something new. You're just blowing through a new ceiling of just not even trust. And our taste buds aren't like that. We don't just like naturally trust food. I think that's more of a survival thing than anything. But, you know, so I think like I see it a lot in CPG where yeah, you could do something cool and jazzy, but like, I don't know if that's what you need, you know?
Right.
And a great example that I always bring up, like, is when someone goes into a store and they're saying, okay, I'm hungry, I want a snack. That's what they're thinking. Answer that, I want a snack, not I want potato chips. About how to get all the way down there. I don't know why, but I have like a measuring tape in my hand this whole time.
What are you doing?
I don't know. It's been on my desk.
What are you going to measure?
I'm just your face.
Yeah.
No, I don't know why.
This is your fidget spinner.
It's my fidget spinner. Yeah.
Some stimulation.
I saw it pop up in the screen and then I was like, well, I need to tell you guys. I have I don't know why it's out, but.
Level up.
Interesting. Actually, I have to say, my sister the other day said that the Zapo leaves looked small. Mm-hmm. And I think I know why this is out, because I was like, do you want me to measure my Zapo leaves? And I couldn't find my straight edge ruler, and I was like, oh, I know where I could go. And so now I'm reminded. I was doing it as a joke in text, but I didn't actually measure them. But she was like, they look really small this year. Yeah, Italian problems for anyone in New England.
Shrinkflation, man.
St. Joseph's Day is a big pastry day, but anyway.
That's so funny.
That's so lame, but I think that's all I've got.
I mean, when you get a small Zeppeli, you're upset.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Anyway. So what else do you want to talk about?
I could talk. I mean, I've got a few things floating around.
Okay.
But I think in my own personal excitement, nerdy world, Figma Slides announced a brand new feature set that is very exciting.
Do tell.
This is my like the alignment of people that are excited about a presentation software getting new features. Very small.
So you do is this specifically for presentations?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I for whatever, I don't know if you have this problem, but I end up doing a lot of presentation work for clients. And there's good money in it, which is great. But they all end up using Canva or PowerPoint, and it's just such a drag that when Figma originally announced that they were going to create like a presentation app, I was super excited because the idea of having like components and variables and just a much easier, customization, like a professional level of customization was really enticing. And the original debut was good, not great. Like, you could do all the things you wanted, but there were no page numbers. The ability to edit templates was really difficult or limited. You could do some really cool stuff, but it was just a challenge. But in the last week, they announced you'll have full component support. So you can really start building like complicated things with variables and instances and things like that. But they have a full PowerPoint import and export. So I can now take my client presentations that I dread working in PowerPoint, edit them in Figma, and then export them back to PowerPoint as if they never knew the wiser. So
I actually don't do any presentation design for anyone.
Not even for yourself?
Well, yeah, I do myself, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I despise it. No, not even that, actually. I outsource my own presentations to the degree. I do the strategy and then, I collaborate with someone, but I am not a presentation designer, no.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's got good money and I can see,
whatever floats your boat, man.
Whatever floats your boat. No, I mean, no, I can see that being very lucrative, and also, I'm very familiar with your, portfolio, and I can see why you have a strong hand in it.
Yeah, well, I think presentations are kind of an unsung hero in the business world.
Yes.
That are very important for some businesses. And it's just been a nightmare dealing with Keynote and PowerPoint.
I used to do a lot more when I worked for a larger company. But I've been independent for so long. I've been really focused on logo structures, brand systems, a lot of the brand architecture and positioning of a company, and then the messaging of that, and then whatever outputs they need. So like usually website and packaging comes from those. But, yeah. So I'm not your strong suit presentation designer.
Yeah.
And your websites and presentations, is that mostly like your big, I mean, branding kind of touches everything, I'm sure, but you know what I mean?
I mean, a lot of people don't reach out just for presentations, but that's kind of a line that we go down eventually.
Well, you know, now that you say it, I don't know if I do a lot of e-brochures. I guess that can be presentation, but it's a little more stagnant. It's not, the way it's more of a takeaway. It's not a, you know.
How many pages are those brochures typically?
Like 10 to 30.
Okay. That could be a good use case.
I feel like that's the beginning of I feel like presentations are like 50 to 100 slides.
Nah.
Okay.
It could be, but don't have to be.
Yeah, I mean, the more that I think about it, we do offer that, but it's never, maybe I'm just thinking about it differently. It's always baked into some of the collateral that comes out of branding, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I like that it's kind of an in-between of like InDesign and having a really defined, design system that's executed over a number of pages, and a PowerPoint or a Canva where it's accessible to anybody but doesn't have the skills to pay the bills. So it's a nice little, I don't know, I just like that I can be handed a Figma file and use all the same level of thinking that I would bring to a design project to a presentation.
Yeah.
Because I've been working on this one client's presentation, and I will not name names, but it's been like 6 months, and it's driving me fucking crazy.
Time for a presentation. That must be comprehensive, though. Is it big?
Nope.
Oh.
It's a good teaching moment where we need to. I'm setting up a meeting with the client to be like, we need to put more strategy into this design. We can't keep refining what's already there without addressing, what's the purpose of this? Where are we headed?
We did a lot when I was working with a company out of Boston that's focused in like high-end real estate and stuff, soon to be built structures. We would develop sales brochures, basically like a digital e-brochure, and they were pretty consistent, but they were high level. So it was like very aesthetically pleasing, and you had like kind of like imagine being here and blah blah blah, and it's like very imaginative at first, and then it gets into like the specs of like what the building's gonna look like and the amenities, and it would sell to investors like JLL and Ackridge. We worked with a good amount, and it was like they definitely weren't done in a month. They were definitely like 2-3 month projects, but never 6 months. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's like
you must be working with a big client, because that's a lot of money.
For one presentation, it certainly is. But it's the type of thing where like we don't get edits for a week at a time, and they only want to do edits over a video call rather than typing up an email, and it's just slowing.
For you.
Yes.
You have a digital note taker?
No.
Oh,
it's me.
What are you doing? You
I'm
gotta
the
add
digital
in the
note
digital.
taker.
You gotta add in that. Be like, can we record this? Record that video. Whatever.
Well, no, it's like
Yeah.
I'm doing the edits live too, and I hate that. But
Oh, yeah.
it's
that's
just
tough.
it's the fastest way to get through the thing.
So, yeah.
Talking about, leaning back into strategy and not execution. This is where I would move out of this line of work.
Right. So, okay. So this is a great gateway into, I think, a pretty interesting subject where it's, so how do I frame this? Let me think real quick. I got to think about how to say this. Is it ever, like, clearly I know the answer to this, but is it ever okay to take on a project if it's well paid and go by whatever process is handed to you, right? So it's like, say it's an hourly, which is like, we already know is not a good scenario because this happens too often. This is why hourly is so, it disregards your process, right? So you're just clocking expensive hours, doing whatever they tell you to. Is that ever
So do you
worth
know
it?
that that's what I'm... So this is my project we're talking about.
Yeah, I know it because of the fact that it's been going on for 6 months. You would have had to cut them off at the knees if you hadn't been continuously getting paid for this, right?
Yeah.
Is it ever better to be in that place or to say, I can do it for a fraction of that cost if you just go by my process, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's where I'm headed, because I've not to say that I'm allowing this project to continue, but I've been dealing with the struggles of this project because it's a well-paid hourly rate. And I don't love hourly rates, and this is why, because they drag on for 6 months, and you schedule meetings without my knowledge and with no kind of like heads up about what the call's even about. And that's how it gets dragged on for so long. But I think in the end, like I'm experiencing now, you reach a point where you just don't want to keep working. So you're like, we need to actually solve this problem, because we could continue refining this thing to death and spend another year refining on it if it's just one edit at a time. And I think what I've learned on that project is the client is now in a mindset of only focusing on refining the individual pages of that presentation to try and make it more cohesive, rather than looking at the whole and saying, is this hitting the mark on what we actually need? And it takes a strategist to intervene in that process and say,
Yeah. It's tough because it's like, are you leaving money on the table, or are you just turning slowly into a more jaded human?
well, at this point, like, I don't care about the money that could be made there, because it's interrupting my own time. Like, there is value in saying that they're gonna schedule a meeting in the middle of something that I actually care about, and I'm gonna have to either reschedule them or deal with them complaining, or it's not the right kind of relationship you want to be in. Not through anybody's fault, but it's worth bringing up.
I think something that I would very in line with this, that I wish I could kind of like whisper in my like client's ear all the time, is that like us designers don't want to do longer processes for more money.
Yeah.
It doesn't benefit anyone to do something an inefficient way.
Yeah.
Even if it's for more money. And I feel like it's kind of like dealing with people that go into like a hairdresser and it's like, I want my hair to be exactly this way. And you're like, well, you don't have thick hair and you don't have blonde hair, so it's not going to look like that. And they're like, well, I want to do it this way. And you're like, okay, you do it, looks like shit. And they're like, well, you didn't do it. It's like, no, you go in to your designers, be like, you know your expertise, and we go by that process. Why? Because you've been doing it for this long, you know? So it's like, but often, time and time again, people are just kind of ignoring that level. Like they think they know better than someone that's done something 10,000, not like in a malicious way. It just seems to be like a default of some people where it's just like, no one wants to do this for longer just cause, you know? And it's, and it kind of, I saw this like analogy the other day. I can't remember if it was on a meme or if it was in a book, but it was like, you know, too many like chefs in the kitchen makes cheese pizza. You know what I mean? It's kind of like,
I haven't heard the end of that before.
Yeah,
I've heard too many chefs in the kitchen, but not that they make a cheese pizza. So that's,
well, it's just like,
like
what's original about cheese pizza? You know what I mean? You're just like, you're getting like a very open slate, nothing creative. You're just getting back to the basics. And I think that you can apply that when you also apply a bloated timeline where you have this timeline that goes out and out and out. And at the end of it, it's like, not only does the is the designer frustrated, but also like the product or output holds no value to the designer. It puts them backwards in a way of thinking, right? Because it's like you can't use it for a case study or a portfolio piece at that point. Because it's not good. So.
Yeah, it makes me think of the law of diminishing returns. Like,
what was the last
law
part?
of diminishing returns? Like, at a certain point, you're not really improving it anymore. Like, the longer you spend on it, you're not gonna get value out of doing it.
Yeah,
and I think that's the same as saying, you know, you're working something to death. You gotta, if you really want to change something up, it's got to be a new idea. So putting firm deadlines on stuff is really important, just for that sense of like, we're going to wrap up this endeavor and get feedback before we can reapproach in a different way. These are all like the pieces of advice. When someone says like, oh, what advice would you give your younger self? I'm like, I'd tell myself this 2 weeks ago. Like, I just wish I didn't do that. Like, set it up differently.
Yeah. I think we're always trying to learn, always trying to please, always trying to find a middle ground. I mean, working with people is tough. It always will be. No matter what you're in, it's always going to be well, that's not the ideal scenario, but it is the scenario.
Compromise. Diplomacy.
Compromise. You're wrong, but I can't tell you you're wrong. So here we are.
I don't need you to know that you're wrong, but I'm going to know you're wrong. Yeah.
Too funny.
So what else is going on in your world? What's up with Studio Quiche? What's up with Rhode Island?
What's up with Rhode Island?
Yeah. Besides Zeppelis.
I'm really bummed that Venture Cafe is no longer doing their networking events. And so I really hope this spring there's some kind of form or action plan to building a community. And it doesn't have to be something I spearhead. So anyone out there that's listening, that's from Rhode Island. No. But like, I think that like, there's definitely a need for some kind of community design crew, something to kind of formulate. So I'm hoping that kind of comes to fruition. I'm talking to a couple designers. I have a couple like dinners on my calendar to like talk about this specifically this month and in April. So that's really exciting. On the Studio Quiche end, I'm 50-50 in an update right now. So I've updated a bunch of stuff in the back. You can't see it on the website, on the public site, but full on in some updates. The standstill is trying to figure out the portfolio section. Am I blowing it up? Am I leaning it down? We've done over like 200 projects in the last 8 years.
Wow.
So it's like, it seems foolish at this point to not have like a pretty robust portfolio. But I don't know.
Well, why?
Yeah.
Why do you need such a robust portfolio? You could easily say, we've served over X number of clients.
Yeah.
And just have that speak to it.
And do no portfolio?
Well, no, I mean,
no portfolio. Yeah.
How
do you funnel it down though? When I've had a lot of different designers work different frameworks on all these different projects, it's hard to embody all of that and encapsulate all of that.
Yeah. Well, maybe you don't have to. Maybe it's just centered around your target customer, or or whatever those different audiences are.
Yeah. So that's the hold up right now, is the portfolio section, and also understanding how to separate out, like, we have some great results, we have some great testimonials. How do we incorporate that? And I want to reactivate the blog a bit. I did 2 posts last year, but got a framework to get into there. So there's a lot moving on with Studio Quiche in the background that I'm just kind of trying to work on. And then also, like, I'm trying to figure out my sales strategy. Like, do I really want to dive more into like pitching to RFPs? You know, there's always that never-ending battle with that kind of, it's there, the budget's there, you can create an outline around it, but is it like, I don't know, I have a love-hate with RFPs specifically. But yeah, so I'm just kind of occupying that. And so for like, I don't know where I read this again, but I believe in this concept that I was kind of passed down to, and it's with selling, that you have 5 main vehicles. So you try 5 different ways, and it's not like, I don't want to say that where it's like you're dominating like 5 social media things, but you have, you've got your networking, maybe RFPs is one of them. I don't know. Reaching out to past customers is one of them. Building out your referral. Maybe you have more of a referral incentive. I don't know if that really is one of the 5, but can be. Just different ways of outreach, right? Whether it's going to places or directly selling or doing paid ads or whatever it is. So I'm trying to be more intentional with my outreach plan. I've been doing pretty well. I've had a lot of referrals come in this year, and last couple of years have been pretty healthy in terms of referrals, but I'm not best at like the outward kind of selling. So I'm trying to really like harness that this spring. So that's nice. A lot of an answer, but that's where I'm at.
That's great.
Yeah.
That sounds big.
Yeah, and I'm going back and forth on actually blocking Thursdays out for no meetings and just creative, and also spending more time going to a cafe and reading more. So you've inspired me to pick up the books again. So I've been trying to, I'm talking more at networking events.
Good.
And with that comes responsibility to articulate better what you actually do.
Yeah.
And why. So
I've been on that note.
Yeah,
somebody
I want to
pitched.
know the same.
Well, no, but I think all that's really exciting, and I'm curious, like, how it sounds a little overwhelming. Sounds like it's a lot. Do you feel good about it? Do you feel like you have a process that feel confident about?
I think that over time it's definitely getting better. I mean, I'm not giving myself a true time limit. First and foremost, and I think this is something that unfortunately everyone understands, is that my clients and my active projects come first before anything.
Yeah.
So, I'm doing as much as I can. A lot of it is done. I've done a lot of strategy and positioning, and really gone back to the basics of like, what what is Studio Quiche? What is it evolving to? What's my role? Like, am I always going to be, because I also, sorry, this is going into a, peel me back when I ramble here.
Hey, it's a podcast. We got time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I brought this up in an early podcast where I believe that there's you have a juggling act as a leader. And the three things are project management, sales, and deliverables. Mm-hmm. Those are the three. And the more that I grow, right, I've tried to, how can you peel back one of those, right? Mm-hmm. And I haven't peeled back any of them. I've tried peeling back deliverables, and that's a very difficult task to do, especially when you're a creative yourself. That is, your driving force, right, in a way, or was a good part of your purpose, was the deliverable. Sales is, I'm the voice. I'm still the voice of Studio Quiche. That's a very difficult one. The longer that I'm in it, I hate project management, but I am getting far better at project management over everything.
Yeah.
So I'm reevaluating all of that and trying to challenge myself again. I challenged this a couple of years ago, and I tried to drop deliverables, didn't work. Tried to drop project management. I tried to drop sales. I tried to drop deliverables first. Didn't work. Maybe I was too young, too new. Tried dropping sales. Wrong process, wrong person. That's fine. I also didn't know enough about sales then. And then thirdly, the last one I tried to drop was project management. And that one failed because I didn't have enough of an ironclad process in project management that I understood enough to be able to pass the baton. Mm-hmm. All in all three of them, I would say, I think what lacked was my experience in really harnessing and owning the systems in all three categories.
Yeah.
So right now, I'm peeling back and I'm looking at those three pillars again and really focusing on harnessing those systems. And that's a lot. I know that's a lot to do over a quarter. It's turning into a half-year project, but that is where I'm looking at. And I think I'm pretty close to being able to pass one of those batons, any of them really. But that's where I'm at. So
yeah.
I don't know if I answered whatever came at me or why I talked about that, but that's where I'm at. Yeah.
No, I get it. I think those are all the hats that you really got to wear as a business owner. I mean, I'm trying to remember what they said in the E-Myth, where it's innovation, orchestration, and I think execution. There's one other variable there, but it's like those are all the things necessary to keep a business afloat. And then how that breaks down into individual roles and departments is its own thing. But you got to wear all of them when you're a solopreneur. And it gets harder and harder to outsource that stuff, especially when you feel kind of uncertain about the process. So I get it. I feel like that's the right direction to head, is like, what is my process? How can I make it more definable? I don't know where I was reading this, but there's a lot of value in making things consistent, even if it's not like the best output, just for the fact that you have data to work around and be like, well, I need to make this move in a different direction to get this output.
Yeah. I think if there's a big takeaway to this is that I think, I've been doing this for 8 years and I'm doing it at a glacial pace. I'm not doing it at an aggressive pace. And I think that I don't know if he meant to be a mentor at the time, but I definitely view him as a mentor. I got a piece of advice when I was back at the design office. I don't know if you remember that whole organization.
Yep.
From, dean of our graphic design department, John Caserta. But he said, something along the lines of what's great about, running your own business is you can go at whatever pace you want. And I think people need to remember that when you're in self-employment, because I think there's a lot of things out there where it's like, well, for the first 2 years, you're doing this. And then and it's like, there's no growth plan retrofitted to whatever you need. I think you need to kind of sense out what you need from a skills standpoint and also like a stress standpoint, and like what's your threshold there, and also just kind of like, keep just trusting your gut.
Yeah, and you can go at whatever pace you want.
Yeah,
that's the benefit of working for yourself, is you're not beholden to anyone.
And you can try different processes,
Yeah. I love it. That's why I do it. Because I like having the flexibility of all that stuff.
Yeah. And what about you, real quick, before we kind of end this off?
Yeah.
How, what's going on in your world for the next quarter or two? You said you're also working on, I don't know if you're at the strategy phase or if you're executing things in the background of Jig Cooper design, but you're definitely...
Yeah, I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm trying to tighten up my process and make it more documented, more predictable, less loosey-goosey, and focusing more on strategy rather than just execution and kind of what that means. That's kind of like the business ops that I'm figuring out, but also the whole process of like, how much portfolio do I need? How can I actually take the insights from all of the creative efforts that we've been working on and separately, and funnel that into the right amount of marketing that's sustainable? I feel like the key with, at least the thing that I think about a lot as a business owner, and I think about for others, is what's sustainable? Like, what can you actually do? And you and I were on a call the other day talking about what we could do for this podcast and promoting it. And you were like, yes, we could do 3 posts a week or this schedule or that schedule, but what can we actually just commit to that is reasonable? And letting go, I think the notion of letting go of expectations that should be there. Letting go of the algorithm.
3 to 5 times a week, I think.
Yeah. And you were like, let's just do one. Like, let's get that first before trying to, walk before we run. I think it's great.
We're actively doing it too. I agree. I think it's just for me. Okay, for example, Instagram, LinkedIn. Those are the 2 main ones that I'm using. Posts, right? Blog posts. I started blogging last year a little bit. So these are mine. This is what I can handle as a business owner, doing all the stuff that I do. And now I'm talking about like, let's, on top of this, let's start a community, whatever, in Rhode Island. And that's why I'm reaching out to creatives, because I'm like, I don't want to spearhead this alone.
I don't want to do it, but I think it should exist.
Well, I'll take a part in ownership, but I definitely don't want to be the one person, But I'll do my, like, this is no algorithm. Nothing's telling you to encourage this. I post on Instagram when I feel like it, but okay, the intention of, I shouldn't say it like that. I post on Instagram. I try to post on Instagram, I'd say 10 posts a year. About where those land, I don't know. I try to post something to show that I am active. I'm an active business. We are open. I have not closed down. I have not abandoned anything. So Instagram, sorry, but you get about 10, 12 posts a year. LinkedIn, I'm trying to be a little more active. Once a month would be great. I just post, again, like I'm going on it more, respond to whatever I can, repost. I know we've got a lot of podcast stuff going on. I don't create a lot, for LinkedIn, but I just kind of post to show that I'm active again. Blog posts. I did 2 posts, 1 a quarter. I'm late on this one because I'm updating the whole site right now. So I did 2 posts last year. So I'm looking at doing maybe 4 posts in a year for now.
Yeah.
One every 3 months. And then our podcast. I don't know if everyone kind of knows this. We never publicly announced it, but our schedule is once every 3 weeks. No podcast out there recommends to do one post every 3 weeks, but it's what we can do right now.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, that's what I've got.
Yeah, but I like owning the pace. Own that pace and just do. I found it very freeing to let go of, the expectations of I could do this many. If I had a good week, I could do 3 a week or 5 a week. And you were just really insistent on saying, let's just start at 1. That feels really realistic, and it's better than nothing. And I'm already late on the one that we're supposed to do today.
Well,
but I'm posting it.
You
I'm
also
posting
got
it after this recording.
Okay, but you got really excited about it the day before. Too. So we're learning. We're learning. I say we start posting once a week will probably happen 3 weeks from now. This is my project management side.
Yeah.
I know what I've already failed at so many times. Not that you haven't. I'm just saying. I think I'm getting better at realistic. The beginning of realistic. Expectations when you start something new, that it's just fuck what everyone says and what the algorithms say, what the metrics say on how consistent you need to be. It's like the same thing on I haven't been that active getting my steps in, so I'm trying to go back to the gym. My husband and I go and we're going half hour. We're just walking on the treadmill, and we haven't gone in a week, but or 2.
Hey, that's better. That's better than nothing. I'm glad you did it. Yeah. And
we have no excuse. We could walk to our gym. It's a mile from our house. Anyway. It's and if it's not that, I say at the end of the day I go, let's just go on a long walk with the dog. Let's just do get some kind of step in. We're not doing any aerobic weightlifting, none of that.
Pilates.
We're just trying to get our steps in and get back into that routine because you know this more than anyone. When you're doing creative and strategy, while you can do it independent and everyone hates the word agency, there is a agency level of grit that happens sometimes that you can't. There are moments when all of us have to do an 80-hour week spontaneously. Throws your entire schedule off, your sleep schedule, your routine, your gym. And that's why it's very difficult, I think, for a lot of creatives to stay very active, because we just have a wild schedule to begin with. However, that's my rant. So.
No, I think it's great. Did you happen to, I know people like the book references, so I'm going to say, did you happen to read Atomic Habits by James Clear?
No.
Okay.
Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. It's a really good book. It's a bestseller that was really popular a couple of years ago. It came out a little while ago.
2018, yeah.
It's great. It talks about the psychology of habits, the patterns of habit forming and building. And one takeaway that speaks to what we're talking about that I really like is habit formation has inertia. The stickiness of habits, it takes 21 tries of something for it to really form some automaticity in your brain to just make it feel like, okay, this is what we do now. So a lot of the advice he recommends for starting new habits is to really scale back to what's the simplest form of that habit to do. In the example of I need to go to the gym, but I have all this anxiety about it, or you have all this it's got to be 3 times a week or 5 times a week. All that pressure gets in your way, creates an obstacle.
What's your routine once you get there?
Right.
What do you use?
Exactly.
What if it's busy? Yeah.
He's for the first 2 weeks, just put on your shoes.
Yeah.
Sounds really dumb, but the fact that you're making the time to just put the shoes on Even if you don't go for that walk or you don't go to the gym, you're priming your brain to say, this is the time that I do this activity. And it makes that inertia of having, checked off in your brain, I did the thing, makes it that much easier to scale up.
Yeah, Chris Do has a great example, I think, as well, that's similar to that and that last analogy, I think, where he says, if this is kind of your goal, if you're trying to think of like running a marathon, the first step is like purchasing the shoes.
Yeah.
And then the second one is maybe going on a walk, right? A long walk. And you get there over time because you're doing those kind of, what is the simplest thing you can do? Yeah. There's a lot of, I think it's something that there's a lot of material out there. I haven't seen this book, so I have a lot of reads, so I'm probably not going to pick it up anytime soon. But
you're like,
but I do agree. I do agree that I love that for people that have a difficult time for habit forming, and like that kind of like understanding the psychology behind how to form habits. But I think it's so like anything, right? I think that the beauty of even us on the podcast is that you got to keep bringing these things up, right? To remind you that like these are natural occurrences. It's not, you're not unique. We all, like our brain, I was told this the other day, the idea of, when you're thinking of something, you want to get your mind off something, so you do something else, right? And then you got to get that project done, and then you got to do this other project, and your mind wanders all day. Your mind naturally wanders. We all have a wandering mind. You're supposed to have a wandering mind, but there's practices to help you kind of channel that and have like intentional moments of thinking of a specific thing or instance or whatever that is. I don't know. I'm making this very vague. It could be trauma related or it could be very project related. I don't know. But, I think we all have to remember all of these natural occurrences that are just, you're not unique in that way. We're all like that,
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah. I like it. Should we wrap up?
I think we should wrap up.
I think that's a good place to end.
It was a good, good session.
So takeaways for today. Get your reps in. Do whatever you got to do to just start. Yeah. Say no more. Don't take on projects that kill your soul. Don't
think of bad pieces of advice.
Yeah.
And how you're going to move through those and go against that bad piece of advice.
Yeah.
That's one. What's another one that we talked about?
Don't be on all the social media channels. Just do what you can do.
Embrace the portfolio that feels natural to you.
Yeah. I think that's the big one. That's probably the theme of the episode. It's portfolio challenges, creation. I don't know.
Navigating the waters of
ChatGPT, give me a title. Just render me out the title.
We did not talk about ChatGPT today, but that is something we should definitely put on our list. I mean, as it's evolving.
Yeah.
Touch lightly on some new tech in Figma. Yeah.
Find your weird thing you're passionate about. There you go. There's your takeaway.
And then, I don't know.
Measure your Zeppeli. Get the value.
Measure your Zeppeli is a huge
Make sure you're getting what you pay for.
Make sure you have your measuring tape ready.
Yeah.
And have fun.
Yeah.
Let's have fun. And talk to more designers.
There we go. And if you're interested in starting a creative community, maybe working with designers can be a part of that. Maybe there's a little working with designers community that could be formed here. Let us know. Let us know what you think.
Yeah. We've got a book club starting, right, Jay?
Hell yeah.
Online community. Yeah, I'm curious to know if we get any thoughts on that. So
Yeah.
A true test if you actually listen to this long of our gabber today.
Right.
Yapper gabber.
If you made it to the end.
Well, no, because you'll know how to answer this.
All right. Until next week.
Until next week.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, I'm cutting that part out. Thanks for listening to Working with Designers. Kristin and I would love to hear from you. Please give us a like and send us your thoughts on whatever platform you found us on. Let us know what questions you want us to talk about in the next episode by filling out our contact form at workingwithdesigners.com. Thanks, and we'll talk to you soon.